is a successful codependence. The greatest evidence of this strength can be found in this very auditorium today. Allow me to introduce some of those people who create the seamless connection between our campus and our community. I wish to first introduce my fellow board members, and I ask you to hold your applause till all are standing. Vice Chair of the Board of Regents, Mr. Frank Downing. Secretary and Treasurer, Alice Sparks. Faculty Regent, Michael Thompson. Staff Regent, Barbara Harold. Student Regent, Chris Saunders. Philip Talafero. Bob Zapp. Karen Bearden, and Robin Krigler. Please join me in acknowledging their many contributions. Lately, they've been working overtime. I now ask that all members of the Kentucky Legislative Caucus present in the auditorium today to please stand and be recognized. Those members here. On a side note, I wish to thank all caucus members present and not present for their unified commitment and effort on the Science Center. We do appreciate it. I now ask that all former members of the Board of Regents and members of the Northern Kentucky University Foundation please stand and be recognized. Those members here. And finally, I ask our interim president, Mr. Jack Moreland, to please stand and be recognized for his dedication and contribution to this university. President Moreland. Thank you. Today marks one of the most historically significant days in the history of Northern Kentucky University. We are naming here today the person who will lead Northern Kentucky University into the next millennium. The importance of this selection is best measured by the description of the task. That is to lead the faculty and staff in their key roles of developing, educating, and preparing our students for future productivity and contribution to the quality of life in our neighborhoods. This endeavor has had success on two fronts. First, the process was dignified, it was orderly, and it was efficient. Secondly, the outcome was extraordinary. Everyone in this room and every family that is touched by this university has the Presidential Search Committee to thank. I say this without fear of exaggeration. They have done a tremendous job. It is now my pleasure to ask Bob Zapp, also a regent and chair of the search committee, to come to the lectern and introduce the search committee members. Bob?
Thank you, Jim. I'm pleased to have this opportunity, excuse me, to introduce the search committee. These people have worked tirelessly. It's been an unbelievable process. They've gone from sorting through roughly 100 resumes, narrowing it down at different junctures to 20 and then to 8 and then to the final 3, which each of you had an opportunity to meet. And these people have really given a lot of themselves. And I think nobody will be more relieved when today's over than when we're able to make the announcement in this committee. But before I introduce them, there's one special person I'd like to introduce. April Conrad Redden served as the administrative assistant to our committee. April is really the person that kept us on schedule from day one. She put in hours beyond what any of us did. And I'd like to ask April to stand and everybody give her an applause. April. For the search committee, I'm just going to read these names so I don't forget anybody. Tom Donnelly, and please stand as I read your name. Sandy Easton, Dr. Tom Isherwood, Alice Sparks, Linda Wright, Robin Krigler, Frank Downing, Bill Erpenbeck, Jamie Ramsey, and Dr. Mike Washington. I ask you to join me in congratulating these people for their job. Thank you.
I just want to emphasize before we leave the search committee that these people are volunteers, and believe it or not, they have families, they have jobs, and probably prior to this they even had a hobby or two, and they have put that aside to do what's in the best interest of this community, and we should always remember that. Now, it is my honor to introduce a person that will have a significant impact on the life of every citizen of Northern Kentucky and this region. The person's strengths and attributes are many. We will ask him to be a leader, a visionary, a standard bearer for our university, and to be the person that shapes the lives and futures of our community and citizens of this Commonwealth. The Board of Regents, the university community, and the search committee are certain you'll be proud to call him your friend, your neighbor, and your president. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to you the fourth president of Northern Kentucky University. Please rise and join me in extending a warm Kentucky welcome to Dr. James Votruba, his wife Rachel, and his daughter Emily.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a great sense of honor and excitement that Rachel and Emily and I join you today in what will be a long and productive friendship and relationship and a building effort that will involve all of us. It's just great to be here. I want to thank Jim Poston, the Board of Regents, the Search Committee, and all of you with whom we've met over these last few weeks for making our trip here to this campus a profoundly meaningful experience. And we look forward to getting to know you better as we move into our relationship. I also want to pay a special tribute to the tenacity of the Northern Kentucky and Metropolitan Media Corps. If democracy depends upon the Fourth Estate, I can tell you that the Fourth Estate is vigorous and in good hands. It was been interesting, the conversations and the variety of ways. This is the closest I may ever come to being part of a witness protection program. Rachel and I and our entire family look forward to calling Northern Kentucky our home. Some of you have met Rachel. Our daughter Emily, who is 19. Our daughter Elizabeth couldn't be here today. She works in Washington, is there with her husband. And our son is back in Michigan and unable to be with us as well, but they certainly would be here if they could. I also want to echo Jim Poston's comments. Never in my professional life have I been treated with more professionalism or sensitivity than I have been by this institution during this process. And for that, I am grateful to all of you. I want to pay particularly a tribute to April Redden, who has got other things on her mind right now. I've been concerned that April might deliver a bit early, but it's wonderful, and she's been a remarkable person in this whole process. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say a couple things to you about my vision for Northern Kentucky University and my role in it as your president. First of all, I'm here not only because of the Regents and the Search Committee and all of you, but because I believe that this university can and should be the preeminent metropolitan university in this country. I believe that high-performing universities, like any organizations, have to set a stake in the ground and have to reach sometimes beyond their grasp. But I do believe that this university occupies a special place in this Northern Kentucky community, and as such, the best days are still ahead. I believe that as the preeminent metropolitan university in this country, it will be a university that's committed to the highest standards of quality in everything we do. Whether it's athletics or academics or student life or how we greet people at the front door of this institution, we must all be the best that we can be. And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that my commitment to you is to be the best that I can be on your behalf, and you deserve that. Second, a commitment to public access and learning across the lifespan. Universities are reinventing themselves like so many other organizations throughout our society, and Northern Kentucky University will be no different. A commitment to standards of quality, a commitment to public access, and a commitment to public engagement as we build partnerships with the Northern Kentucky region to support economic development and quality of life. The reality is, my friends, that this university is inextricably tied to this state and to this region. As this region prospers, so too will this university prosper. And in fact, the history of American higher education is that the public has invested in its colleges and universities, not because they were ends in themselves, but because they were instruments to achieve larger social purposes. And so as we look at Northern Kentucky University and its future, we've got to look at how we connect with that broader set of social purposes that will drive our future and the future of our community. To accomplish these commitments, NKU must, first of all, have mission clarity and focus. My friends, we need to be clear about what business we're in, and by inference, what business we are not in. We need to be clear about who we serve, how we serve them, where we serve them. Clarity and focus will be a priority for this president to help us more clearly define not only what we are, but what we wish to be, not in terms of 35 goals, but a set of strategic priorities that will be linked to how we plan and how we budget. Second, we need to be strategically positioned both within the region and within the Commonwealth. We must invest in our human resources, which are the most important resources that any academy can have. We need to reflect the financial stability that both makes the strongest case we can in Frankfurt, while at the same time becoming less dependent on Frankfurt for our resources. Our future cannot be tied exclusively to Frankfurt. We have got to enlist the support of our friends and our colleagues and our neighbors in this region who will see an investment in Northern Kentucky University as an investment in themselves and in their own future. We must have a curriculum that prepares students not only for their first job, but for their last job, and reflects a commitment to student-centeredness and a set of defining characteristics that speak to our uniqueness. It is not enough to simply be committed to access. Our curriculum must stand for something unique, and to ask someone on the street what defines Northern Kentucky University and its curriculum, we should be able to get a clear and concise response to that question. This university, to thrive, is going to have a strong and lasting and innovative and entrepreneurial spirit and sufficient agility, even in tight times, to adapt its programs and services as needs change. We must be a risk-taking campus, and along with risk comes the prospect of occasional failure. But I believe that organizations in times of change and reform have to risk failure and at times experience some failure in the process of reaching high in terms of their aspirations. We must forge strong and lasting partnerships with this community such that an investment in the university is an investment in Northern Kentucky itself. We will have partners with business and industry, with healthcare organizations, with K-12 education, with community-based organizations, with other post-secondary institutions in order to enhance economic development and the quality of life in this region. President Moreland has made an enormous start with his partnership program, but it is a first step in what must be many steps to connect us in so many different ways to the public that supports us, believes in us, and counts on us in this knowledge age. We must reflect the diversity of this great Commonwealth and this nation. A 21st century university cannot offer a 21st century education, in my judgment, without a diverse faculty and a diverse staff and a diverse student body. Finally, we must possess a sense of shared vision, shared values, and common purpose that bind us together. The notion of a university community, a community that is bound together by shared values and purpose, will be at the core of our success. We have got to think together. We've got to be open and honest with each other. We've got to acknowledge and to listen as well as speak. But we must move as a community, and it's that glue, it's those values and that purpose and that vision that will be the glue that will hold us together at times of disagreement, because we'll have them. We will have them, and energetic, vital organizations have disagreements, but we must also have that glue that binds us together. Now, I don't need to tell you, or anyone in this room, that these are challenging times for American higher education. From all sides, we hear calls for reform, and reform we must, because the world is changing and higher education must change with it. Incidentally, this is not only true for universities. When I talk to healthcare CEOs, they speak the same language. When I speak to school superintendents, they speak the same language. When I speak to Tier 1 suppliers and Big 3 from the automobile industry, they're speaking the same language. All of us in this society are reinventing themselves. And so we no less than those other organizations and institutions must be able to do the same. The great longshoreman philosopher Eric Hoffer once wrote a particular message for universities when he wrote, quote, in times of change, the learners will prosper, whereas the learned will be dealing with a world that no longer exists. The learners will prosper, whereas the learned will be dealing with a world that no longer exists. We must all commit ourselves to building a learning organization at Northern Kentucky University, a university that disabuses itself and is willing to speak honestly and openly about itself and willing to grow by being a learning organization. More recently, Jack Welch, the CEO of General Electric, spoke of the risks inherent in the failure to adapt when he said, when the rate of change outside an organization is greater than inside, then the end is in sight. When the rate of change outside an organization is greater than inside, then the end is in sight. And finally, Prince Edward of England is reported to have said regarding change, the time for change is right when you can no longer avoid it. The time for change is right. It's when you can no longer avoid it. Governor Patton's call for reform represents the public call for greater accountability and the public call as well and recognition that public universities must be linked to the public interest. That's what we're hearing in Kentucky. That's what we're hearing in Michigan. That's what we're hearing in California and New York and Florida and Georgia and every other state as the public calls these great institutions to accountability. Because the public understands that in the knowledge age, the university must be front and center in the public interest. Access to knowledge is what will drive this region, this state, this nation, and this world, because access is our newest commodity. The public call for reform that a young university and an ambitious institution like NKU can find within that call its greatest opportunity. When the public calls us to reinvent ourselves, when the public calls us to connect anew with that public whom we serve, a 30-year-old institution, a vital, energetic institution like Northern Kentucky University, it is in that call that we find our opportunity. We must, in my judgment, be at the cutting edge of this higher education reform movement, and in fact, we should be front and center in defining that movement, not only for the governor, but for all public policy makers and for the public as a whole. Together, my friends, the regents, the faculty, the staff, the students, the alums, our community friends can make it happen. We can build an extraordinary institution. We can take Northern Kentucky University to the next level, and in the process, we'll define our own future. This, in my judgment, is both the challenge and the opportunity that confronts Northern Kentucky University's next president to inspire, to provoke, to build consensus, to listen, to interpret, to challenge, to support, to focus, to at times disabuse, and to lead in a way that empowers this campus and everyone in it. And that's my commitment to you as I stand here today on the first day of what will be many days of our interaction. There are always problems, ladies and gentlemen. And as I travel around the country and interact with a broad range of universities and colleges, I break them kind of into two categories. one that only sees the problems and the obstacles and the constraints. There isn't enough money, the public doesn't appreciate it, it's all this kind of thing, and they sit and spin and they are rendered motionless. And another set of institutions that, while acknowledging the problems and the challenges, also focus on the opportunity. And I'll tell you folks, this university has enormous opportunity. And together, we're going to realize it. I look forward to our journey together. I appreciate you all being here for this first of many occasions. I can't wait to begin, and Rachel and Emily and I can't wait to call Northern Kentucky University and Northern Kentucky our home. Thank you so much for your welcome. Thank you.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of our formal announcement. Thank you very much for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me make one other comment. I'd like to come downstairs and meet all of you and meet as many of you as I can. Come down and say hello and introduce yourself. I'll be down here for a few minutes. Good job. Wonderful.